I greet you all and welcome you to the lesson. Today we will discuss corporate relationships in the government. Corporate relationships in the government. The subject is public sector governance, policy, and administration. Now, corporate relationship in government refers to the interactions between various entities within the public sector, as well as with the external stakeholders like the private companies, the civil society organizations, and international partners. So these relationships are governed by laws, they are governed by regulations, and they also may be governed by policies aimed at ensuring transparency, accountability, and ethical conduct. Now, the key corporate relationships in the Kenya government include the interagency relationships. Interagency relationships. Number one is the interagency relationships. The interagency relationships. Now, government ministries, departments, and agencies often collaborate to achieve common goals and to deliver services effectively. And such collaboration involves sharing information, sharing resources, sharing expertise, and coordinating activities to avoid duplication and ensure efficiency. So this is the first relationship, interagency relationships. These are government ministries interact with the government departments as well as government agencies, what we normally refer to as the MDS. Another set is the government-owned corporations. Government-owned corporations. Now, the Kenya government owns and operates various corporations in sectors like energy, transport, finance, manufacturing, and so on. And these government-owned corporations have their boards of directors and management teams, but are ultimately accountable to the government through the relevant ministries. So there is that corporate relationship between the government-owned corporations and government ministries, departments, and agencies. Three is a public-private partnerships, the PPPs, public-private partnerships. Now, the government increasingly engages in public-private partnerships to leverage private sector expertise and resources for infrastructure development and service delivery. And these partnerships are governed by contractual agreements that outline the roles and responsibilities of each party. So the government may collaborate or interact with private entities, and that is part of the corporate relationships in government. Remember, we say that corporate relationships involve the interaction between various entities within the public sector, as well as external stakeholders like private companies. So this relationship extends not only within the government, but with other private entities. Public-private partnership. Number four, government and civil society organizations. The third relationship is between the government and civil society organizations. Now, the civil society organizations play an important role in advocating for public interests, providing services, and also monitoring government performance. And the government engages with the civil society organizations through consultations, partnerships, and grant making mechanisms. That's another relationship, government and civil society organizations relationships. 5, international partnerships. International partnerships. Now, the government collaborates with the international partners like the development partners, foreign governments. It also interacts with the multilateral organizations in order to access funding, to access technical assistance and expertise for various development projects. So there is also that relationship between the government and international partners, development partners, development agencies, foreign governments, multilateral organizations, and so on. And the candidates, there are various laws and regulations that govern corporate relationships in Kenya government. So we first of all outlined the relationships. First of all, we have the relationship between the ministries, departments, and agencies, interagency relationships. The government, departments, ministries, and agencies relate to provide services and so on. Then we have government-owned corporations which have independent boards and management teams. These government-owned corporations also relate or interact with the government ministries, departments, and agencies. The third set of relationship is public-private partnerships. Public-private partnerships. Then we have the government and civil society organizations. Then we have outlined some of the international partnerships. And I've said that there are laws and regulations that govern corporate relationships in the Kenya government. And that includes, first of all, the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which sets out the principles of public service, including integrity, transparency, accountability, and public participation. It also provides for the establishment of institutions like the Public Service Commission, the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, in order to oversee and enforce ethical conduct in public sector. There is also the Public Finance Act, the Public Finance Management Act, which provides a framework for the management of public finances, including budgeting, procurement, asset disposal, and so on. It also aims to ensure transparency, accountability, and value for money in the use of public resources. There is also the Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act, which helps in corporate relationships in government. The Act, the PPDA Act, regulates the procurement of goods, services, and works by public entities, and also the disposal of public assets. The Public Procurement and Asset Disposal Act aims to ensure fair competition, transparency, accountability in the procurement process. So that's all we can say as for the corporate relationships in the government. It's important to also note that apart from the Constitution of Kenya, the Public Finance Management Act, the Public Procurement and the Asset Disposal Act, another legal and regulatory framework for the corporate relationships in government is the State Corporations Act, The State Corporations Act governs the establishment, management, and operations of state corporations. This act sets out the roles and responsibilities of boards of directors, management teams, and the government in overseeing these corporations. So that is a very important legal and regulatory framework for the corporate relationships in government. Allow me to read the assignment. One, what are the different types of corporate relationship that exist within the Kenyan government, and what are the implications for government and service delivery? Two, how can public-private partnerships be effectively managed to ensure value for money, transparency, accountability in the delivery of public services? Three, what are the legal and regulatory frameworks governing corporate responsibilities in the Kenyan government, and how can they be strengthened to prevent conflicts of interest and corruption? Four, what is the role of the civil society organizations in monitoring and influencing corporate relationships in the government, and how can their participation be enhanced, and how can their participation be enhanced? In our next lesson, we are going to discuss value-based leadership, values-based leadership. Bye.